everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. Continuing on with the 1880s bustle theme that we started last week, I am celebrating my enjoyment of season 3 of the Gilded Age by making an 1880s bustle dress. And specifically, if you watched last week's video on 1880s fashion, you will know that there was a somewhat niche, but honestly it was a very popular trend in 1881 and continuing through 1882 with rainbow stripes. So to celebrate Pride Month, which I know by the time you are watching this video it's July, but right now it's June. To celebrate Pride Month, I have decided I am going to make a rainbow bustle dress. Now, it's not entirely rainbow. Almost none of these dresses that had rainbow stripes were entirely rainbow. They were usually rainbow along with a solid color. So I have picked out this fashion plate right here, and as you can see, she's got all of the beautiful rainbow stripes in the shirring as well as in some of the trim on the bodice, and I'm going to reproduce this fashion plate. At first I was going to do this completely with stash, or rather with some of the like closing out of Joann's fabric, but I realized that the fabric that I got for that, which I had kind of earmarked for a bustle dress, it's the wrong shade of blue, and frankly I had earmarked it for a different bustle dress. So I am actually currently waiting on the blue fabric to arrive, which means we are going to be starting with the skirt today. I have already placed the order for the blue fabric, and I got it from Cali Fabrics, which was one of the fabric stores which some of you had recommended as like a different alternative for buying your fabric online, which I shared with you all in my like alternatives to Joann's video. And they have a pretty good swatch system. You can get any swatch you want for 50 cents, and I think it cost, did it even cost $1 to send for shipping? It was something very, very low. So I got a bunch of different swatches, some for this project, some for other projects, and this was the fabric that I wound up choosing. This is a 100% cotton sateen. It is number 294. I think that's an 8-3. I'll link the exact fabric down below in the description in case anyone else is interested. I got 3 of their sateens, and they are all very nice quality, and I think they were about like $8.99. So I have already now placed the order for this. I'm just waiting for that to arrive, and I think that it will go really nicely with the rainbow stripe that I am using for this project. I know it kind of looks like what I'm wearing, but this rainbow stripe is actually a set of bed sheets that I got at the thrift store sometime last year. I don't even remember when, and it's a lot. There's another piece somewhere that Maisie has usurped. So Maisie has stolen the top portion. She was very much liking this fabric as I was prepping it too, which you can see right here. I'm prepping the fabric right now, seam ripping all of the hems and everything, and like where the fitted sheet parts are joined together. And I stepped out of the room for less than a minute to take muffins out of the oven, and someone has usurped my fabric. Ma'am? Ma'am, I'm working here. Are you going to seam rip for me? Look at that, retreating even farther into her rainbow cave. I mean, it's cute, because she's cute. Hey, Maisie, are you going to sew this for me? I could really use your help with the shirring. You're so good at purring. Maybe you're good at shirring too? And on that note, I have already kind of prepped these bed sheets because the other sheet, or maybe it's this one of them is a fitted sheet. And so I needed to go around. Someone had already removed the elastic, but because they were older sheets that had been elasticized for so long, it had that scrunched in edge and I couldn't even iron it flat. So I seam ripped the corners out so that I could get it all flat, and I seam ripped the casing where the elastic was, and that way now I have a flat surface to work with. And basically these are about 77 inches wide by 99 inches long. The fitted sheet, of course, it's kind of like a weird plus sign because of those corners, so it's not quite as much yardage. But I already went through and I have mathed out this whole project because I wasn't sure if I would have enough of the rainbow stripe to do it as the base of the skirt or only as the ruffles, because as we can see from this design, there is a lot of fabric going into these ruffles. So for my pattern, my base pattern for my skirt, I am using a pattern from the Victorian Dressmaker Volume 2 by Isabella of Prior Attire. I definitely recommend her books. They're really cool. And this one specifically is the walking or croquet dress from 1879. Now, yes, my design is 1881, but frankly, this is the skirt shape that I'm looking for. If we look closely at that, it even kind of does the same kickback that my skirt does. So this is literally a like two-piece skirt pattern. There's a front piece, there's a back piece. I am probably going to cut my back into two pieces because I like to have a center back closure. So that's my plan, is to put the closure in the center back. So I've already drafted up this to my measurements because I am both taller and bigger than Isabella. These are all done to her measurements. So then I went through and I kind of mapped out probably these ruffles are going to be a 3-to-1 ratio to the base skirt. And I also went and did my like algebra scale math and measured out her waist to floor or waist to hem versus mine and figured out just how tall these ruffles should be. So basically what I can't quite tell from this drawing is if there is additional ruffle up underneath all of like the ruffles on top of it. Honestly, I think so. So I'm making them a little bit longer than what shows, and basically including seam allowance, I need my two lower ruffles, because these ones are longer, I need them to be 8.75 inches tall, and I need the top ones to be 7 inches tall. And at like a 3-to-1 ratio, basically there's 116.5 inches of fabric, full width of the fabric, just going into the ruffles, which is more than the entire flat sheet. So I am not going to have enough of the rainbow fabric to cut out the base of the skirt as well. So my plan is the base of my skirt is actually going to be white cotton sateen. This is some of the cotton sateen that I got when I was up in Canada. So you will maybe remember this from my Canada fabric shopping video. And this is going to be the base, but I do have enough of the rainbow where I can actually mount it flat on top of the cotton sateen for underneath the ruffles. That way, if a ruffle kicks up, we're still going to see rainbow stripe on the bottom. And also, if you notice, this bottom ruffle doesn't actually go all the way to the hem. So that way we're going to get that rainbow stripe around the hem as well. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I am going to cut my base skirt out of the cotton sateen with the lower half, basically the bottom like 22 inches plus seam allowance. The bottom of the skirt is going to also be cut out of the rainbow, same exact pattern shapes, that will be mounted to the cotton sateen. And then I can also cut out all of my strips of ruffles and hem those all up and shirr those, because basically what we're looking at right here is this is all shirring. So every single tiny line that you see in there, that is a row of stitching, of gathering stitching, and it has all been pulled up. So we're talking like 5+ rows of gathering stitches, and that's all getting pulled up. So we're getting a lot of that ruffle that is just what you call shirred, and it's just like all scrunched up, and then the ruffle comes out below it. So yeah, that's how this is going to work. Hopefully it won't be too bad, but I know those are famous last words because ruffles always take so much more time and effort than you think they're gonna take. Ruffles honestly are pretty much a pain. And the other thing that is going to be a pain is that I don't trust that these stripes are like perfectly on the grain. I mean, they look like they are, but basically I don't know that I trust ripping these strips. I might try one to see, because I know, like from when I was undoing the hems of this, I know that this edge over here, this is not straight on the grain. So I would love to rip it on the grain and just give myself a nice starting point. Oh, and you can see this is the fitted sheet. That's what happens when you do a fitted sheet. It is sewn together with the corner, and then it is elasticized to fit around the mattress. But yeah, I think I might test it because it would save me so much effort if I really could just rip these strips as opposed to having to cut them all. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on ripping out the strips because I think that that is the more important thing to do as opposed to cutting out the base fabric. If absolutely necessary, I can shorten how much of the rainbow's showing, but having enough for the ruffles is super, super important. And then of course I need to leave myself enough for the rainbow on the collar and the cuffs as well. So yeah, that's our project. I am gonna start getting stuff cut out. Again, since I've already patterned these things, I can just dive right into it. And hopefully we'll be able to get the whole skirt done in this week's video. And then once the bodice fabric and overskirt fabric comes next week, we can go ahead and work on that. So keep your fingers crossed for me. Let's go ahead and dive in. Good news, I decided to try ripping just kind of like right on the edge where really the only stuff I'd be wasting would be like the folded over part that used to be in the fitted sheet. And good news, it rips across the grain. Now, ripping absolutely makes Cookie go crazy, so that's what's happening down here right now. I don't know why he doesn't like the sound of ripping, so I might have to put him in another room for right now while I try to rip this fabric, because he just kind of wants to like attack me, but like not cruelly, just like jump at me and kind of like paw at me repeatedly when I rip fabric. So if we could just calm down, because I rip fabric a lot, Cookie. I really do. So does anyone else's dog or cat maybe react in such a way? I've never experienced that before with like Maisie or with Lion and Dora. So let me know if you have a weirdly reactive pet to the sound of ripping fabric. Yeah, you gotta calm down. Good boy. So before I go and just do like all of the ruffles, I am going to do a test section of ruffle. So I have sewn together the ends of the top ruffle, and actually I've left a little bit extra on there just because I was like finishing, you know, the width of one fabric, which Cookie has stolen, which yeah, is all the way here. And frankly, that's good because I realized that I did my math wrong. I forgot that I increased the width and then I did not add that width of like the base skirt to my math to do the ruffles. And that means that that changes a lot because mine is 12 inches larger all the way around and then times 3. So to be honest, this may not even quite be enough. I had a little pin marked of where the initial like, you know, math said I should stop that ruffle. But I think that I need more than this addition in there. So I may actually have to add more to the end of this ruffle. But in any case, I'm just going to test it with one little section here. So I've already put in my hem all the way on, you know, one long side of this. And what I've now done for the section that I'm testing is I have just folded this over. Now I'm going to start adding my shirring stitches, my gathering stitches, and I'm going to start with one about 1/4 inch away from the edge, and then every 1/2 inch from there. For, I did the math, but it was like this chunk of section. I don't remember exactly what my dimensions are, but basically about 1/2 of this width is going to get shirred up, and then the bottom 1/2 is just going to be loose ruffled. So I'm going to add in my 4 or 5 rows of gathering stitches, and the top gathering stitch is going to anchor this fold down as well. And yeah, we'll see what that looks like. Again, I sectioned out and marked off only enough so that I could just test this on what will become the front of the ruffle. But frankly, that's like 108 or so inches, something like that. And so like I marked where the center will be at the 54-inch part, and then I marked the end of where I would want that. That's a long stretch to be doing on like one thread without stopping, but I didn't want to stop that thread in the center, which makes the most sense mathematically, because whenever you stop a gathering section, it's gonna look weird, and I don't want that to be front and center. So I'm going to attempt to run gathering stitches on the entire 108-inch length and just hope that since there are 4 of them all next to each other, they will do fine in pulling them up. And this is also relatively lightweight fabric. I would definitely not try this with thicker fabric, but this is a poly cotton blend that again was bed sheets, so it's quite thin. So hopefully that's gonna work. We're gonna be especially careful over the seams because we do have 2 seams within this section. And we are going to pull everything up and hope that it gathers, and that will also give us kind of the math of like, do I actually want a 3-to-1 ratio? That's why I'm trying this out, because maybe I don't. Maybe I only want 2-to-1, maybe I want 2.5-to-1. So I have to test it out and see what looks best. This is definitely where one of those little like shirring machines with all the different needles would really come in handy. But I have done, I think it's 7 lines of stitching up here. It was actually one less than like the math that I had factored of how much the ruffle should be down here, but it just seemed like that ruffle would be too short. So I did 7. They are 0.45 inches apart from each other, because again, that was how my scale math worked out. And you can see I've gathered up a little bit of a section here. This is going to take me forever to do. I definitely should have done smaller sections, like not 108 inches altogether. So I may wind up kind of breaking my strings off purposely and making them smaller. But I also did my scale math. So I kind of gathered up this section right now, and this is about 1.25 inches between the centers of the pink stripes. Luckily with stripes, this all makes it much, much easier, but it's about 1.25 inches apart, whereas the pink stripes actually are just over 3.25 inches apart. So gathering it down to 1.25 inches, that is not quite a 3-to-1. It's pretty close. That would be if they were like 3.75 inches apart. So it's pretty close. So I may wind up with a little extra than what I need for just the center section, but I'm going to spend a while gathering all of this down before I even move on to the shirring of the next section, just to make sure I like it and see what the maths. And yeah, that's where we are right now, though. I have all of this to now pull up the shirring on. The front shirring is all pulled up and it looks so super cute. I did measure. This seems to be about the measurement of what the front will be. Not that I've, cut out the base skirt yet. I'm going to go ahead and do that next before I make any more ruffles, but I wanted to test this out first and it looks just about perfect. My only kind of qualm is every time there's a seam, of course the pattern repeat isn't quite identical. So you can see here we've got a little bit more white at the seam there. The other one I feel like blends better because it would be somewhere over here. Yeah, I think it's right here, but it's definitely blending a bit better. So yeah, that looks really, really cute. I have so much more of this that I need to do for this project, but let's go ahead and cut out the base skirt, except that someone has stolen my fabric again. Maisie, I need this fabric. You can have the leftover, but I need some for the skirt. I like how she's just pretending to sleep and not hear me. Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. Hello. Can I have the fabric? She says, no, I'm sleeping. Although I have a lot of this sateen, it was just a tiny bit too narrow to cut out the back piece on the fold. So I decided to go ahead and just put in a little inset piece here for how much fabric I could not get to, which literally inches we're talking here on either side. So yeah, I did that on both sides, and that is going to get covered over by the rainbow anyway. So you're going to see this part from the back, but that's it, because this is the sateen shiny side that's going to be facing in is what I decided. And yeah, so now I can go ahead and cut the rainbow, which is wide enough to just cut it without piecing. But we've got a little bit of piecing going on there, and no piecing on the front was necessary, just the back. So I have the back pieces all prepped and sewn together now. Basically, I folded down the top of this and then stitched that with a top stitch on the machine, and then the rest of it is serged around the edges as if it were flat lining. So that is all prepped and good. The center back is sewn except for the top 8.5 inches. And then I've just pinned some pleats in, kind of based on Isabella's pattern, but kind of just eyeballing them. I think hers had 3, but that didn't quite look like enough. So I did 4 on each side. I don't know if that's the right measurements or not. I was just, kind of prepping that. So that is ready to get attached to the front and also to pockets, because although, I mean, I don't know. I'm putting pockets in this skirt, and I don't know why I'm putting pockets in this skirt, because I won't have access to the top of this skirt. It is fully covered by the bodice, drape, etc. situation. However, I don't know if there is a way that makes sense to put pockets in that. but does it make sense to put pockets in this when that overskirt goes to, like, you know, overlaps all the way down to here? Like, I'd have to reach down so far and then reach back up to get to the pockets. And maybe there is like a solution to where we can put pockets kind of in the side seam here. There's some sort of like a decoration going on where it kind of meets the back. So I don't know, I might be able to hide pockets in there because frankly, it's gonna be too slim to the body to be able to reach up and under and add pockets in the petticoat. So I know this is a crazy thing, but actually, come to think of it, I'm not gonna put pockets in the petticoat because at least for this outfit, which is what I'm making this for, I'm not gonna be able to access them. So what's the point, I guess? Okay, so yeah, never mind. I won't put pockets in the petticoat and hopefully I won't regret that decision. I mean, I suppose there's no harm in putting them in, right? I know, you're getting my whole thought process here. I know some of you really like this sort of thing. Because I suppose, like, I mean, if they exist, it's not like they're really adding much bulk. It's cotton sateen, it's very lightweight. Okay, fine. I'm gonna put pockets in the petticoat, even though I might not be able to use them at all. I am also going to attempt to put pockets in the overskirt drape situation once we get to there. But in any case, the thing that I have to figure out before I can really, like, even figure out where exactly the ruffles are going on this, because I need to be able to hem it over, is petticoat and padding. So I have not actually done this era before. I have done natural form, but I've done earlier natural form, like the big whole train situation, etc. I have not done this like 81 pretty darn slim to the body natural form era. Now that said, there is still a little bit of poof to the back here. So the question is, what kind of bustle padding do I need? I have this tiny little pad, which really doesn't do much at all, or I have this much larger pad, which I believe is what I used for my 1870s natural form, and I feel like this makes more sense. And then the question on top of that is literally, what do we put on top of that? What do we do petticoat wise? So this was kind of the first bustle petticoat that I ever made for my first bustle back in 2013. It has definitely seen better days. Like, it is torn over here and it's actually too small too, so I just pin it closed. But it's still a good bustle petticoat. This is made of cotton organdy. It's the first cotton organdy thing that I ever made in my life. And once it's pressed and stuff, it does do a pretty decent job of being a bustle petticoat. However, for the 1870s natural form, I used my 1890s petticoat. This is made out of Pimatex cotton, and part of the reason that I use this is because it has a semi-detachable, as in I have to sew it on and then seam rip it off, train piece that gets added on. There's like, yeah, here we go. I made a thread marking in here. I don't even know if you can see it because it's white on white, but there's a thread marking, which is where the top of that train piece gets attached to, and that is part of the reason why I used it for that. I don't know if it would actually be too much though for this, because as you can see, it really does have a lot of volume at the bottom. So I'm gonna play around with like what that back drape piece, or that back piece of my underskirt, what that looks best over, whether it's this one or the ruffled petticoat, and whether it's a small pad or the large pad. And we're just gonna see like, okay, what works best for this era that I already have on hand, because I'm not making anything new undergarment wise for this. And yeah, we'll play around with it, and then we will attach the front with pockets. I think the large pad with the ruffled petticoat combo is going to be best. I did just super quickly press the top two ruffles. I did not press the rest of it, but you can kind of get an idea for how this will look a little bit more full. I did kind of just drape the skirt portion over it. It looked right, so that's the winner. These skirt panels are all assembled here. You can see the little sort of chevron that we get where the two panels meet. And that means it's now time to put it on a waistband. This is just cotton sateen backed with cotton organdy. That is what I tend to do for my waistbands. Instead of interfacing, I use cotton organdy, and it's just flat lined, and I'm going to attach it in the usual way. So as you can see, I have the skirt on. It is, you know, semi-complete, as in the base is complete, and it is ready to get the ruffles on. However, I do have to hem this before I can put the ruffles on. And one thing that I haven't done yet that I wasn't going to do until until after the ruffles that I'm hoping isn't going to affect the hem, but there's going to be tapes on the inside of the skirt, like around inside the back of the legs, kind of drawing together the back more out this way. I think that I can get away with not putting those tapes in yet, because I know that they're going to get in the way of the ruffles and the ruffles might affect things with those tapes. So yeah, I'm just going to hem it as is. As you can see, it is definitely too long in the back. I probably just cut it way too long. It's not meant to drag on the ground. It's meant to be just off the ground. And the front is meant to be like an inch or two above the ground, so you see a bit more of the shoe. So I will just turn up that hem. I had intended for a 3-inch hem, to be honest, so I don't think I actually have 3 inches in the front. I think I probably have more like 2 maybe. But yeah, I'm going to turn up that hem and pin that in place, and then ruffles can be mounted on top. There we go. That looks much better. I still have to actually sew it in place, but it is all pressed and pinned in place and ready to be sewn. Once it is sewn, I can also add the ruffles onto the skirt. Hi, Cookie. So unfortunately, that is actually all that I managed to get to. I still need to do the hem on the skirt. Oh, it's on this dress form over here. I still need to actually sew the hem. So it is pressed, pinned in place, etc. I have one of the rows of the smocked gathers all done and ready to go on. It just needs to be sewn end to end. And I have the rest of the rows like ripped out into strips ready to be put together. But honestly, I saw a pleater, like an actual smocking pleater on Facebook Marketplace, and I sent out a message to the person. So I haven't heard back from them yet. That was yesterday. I'm hoping that maybe if I hear back from them, that honestly that is an investment that might be worth it. It just, I mean, for a project like this, but also just going forward, it would probably be a good tool to have so that I can do stuff like this a lot more easily, because this was a nightmare honestly to do, and I'm not looking forward to doing the other 3 rows, especially since 2 of them have even more rows of gathering than this one does. So I am going to go ahead and just hand sew the hem tonight, and then actually the fabric arrived for the bodice slash overskirt drape. So this is you can see it together, what that looks like. Very, very pretty. So I may in fact even move on to this one for like next week. It's not actually next week. Next week you're going to see a completely different project, and then we're coming back to this in 2 weeks. But I may actually move on to the bodice, and that way I can wait to hear back from that lady to see if maybe I can get that smocking pleater from her and make my life just a little bit easier. So yeah, that is going to be it for today. If you like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, usually with sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays, and sometimes with additional costuming or sewing related content out on Saturdays. But I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks or join my YouTube channel memberships right here on YouTube below the video. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Guardian level patrons, Jean and Kim. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing and happy belated Pride!